I warmly welcome our viewers on the home screens throughout many time zones today. We will now start our event on intensified cooperation in search for common ground for Japan, Germany, and their partners. I am Rabea Brauer, the head of the Konrad-Adenauer Japan office, and I'm also the director of the KAS Regional Economic Program in Asia, and I warmly welcome all of you today. This event does contribute to broader festivities targeting 160 years of German-Japanese relations. We have distinguished guests today with us who look back for us, but more importantly ahead, because our world order is rapidly changing and the pandemic is accelerating this as a factor. Therefore, strengthening alliances and attracting new partners are lines of efforts written into many national defense strategies these days, and partnerships of like-minded nations are an unmatched advantage to safeguard freedom and peace. And with those remarks, I like to open our conference now. We will begin this session with Ambassador Hidenao Yanagi, as the Japanese embassy in Berlin is our co-host today, and he will be followed by Ms. Beate Neuss, who is the Deputy Chair of the Konrad-Adenauer-Foundation and Professor of International Politics at the University of Chemnitz. A little housekeeping before we start. I like to remind all our panelists to stay in the session for a group picture at the end of the event. And I like to inform our participants of a change. Ambassador Philip Green is unfortunately not able to attend this event. He accompanies, as we speak, the Australian Trade Minister in Berlin today, but Defense Attaché Captain Ben Poxon will support us instead. Thank you, Captain Poxon, for jumping in on short notice, I have to say. Now, I like to welcome our speakers today. Thank you for joining us on this special occasion. I especially like to thank Ken Weinstein for getting up literally in the middle of the night. Bridging 3 time zones is quite a challenge, I have to say. I also would like to say that we have staged this event in a very timely moment because it is taking place just after Germany-Japan 2+2 talks, after Japan's Prime Minister Suga visited the US, being the first statement to do so, after the EU announced its first draft on its own Indo-Pacific strategy, and moments before the German frigate will set its sails towards this region. And not only because we have to discuss so much today, but also to show off our capable Asia department in Berlin, I am joined today by my dear colleague, Ms. Barbara Völkel, you can see on screen, who leads the Asia and East Asia and Pacific desk. So welcome, Barbara, on board for the co-moderation. But now I like to move on to the opening remarks. Ambassador Yanagi, please, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Brauer, and good morning and good afternoon, Tokyo. Mr. Rodrich Kizebetta, Member of Bundestag, Mr. Nakayama Yasuhide, State Minister, Ministry of Defense, Mr. Kyuichi Minoru, the former State Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Member House of Representatives, Professor Dr. Beate Neuss, Deputy Chair of Konrad-Adenauer-Foundation, distinguished speakers, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to welcome you to the panel discussion organized by the Konrad-Adenauer-Foundation and the Embassy of Japan in Germany today on the occasion of the 160th anniversary of Japan-Germany friendship. I thank all the staff of the Konrad-Adenauer-Foundation who contributed toward realizing this event. Last week, I paid a courtesy call on President of the Foundation, Dr. Nobel Klammert, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Foundation for maintaining close cooperative relations with Japan, including its cooperation on the 1.1 Japan-Germany security. This anniversary year, the cooperation between Japan and Germany is making great progress. Last week, there was the first Japan-Germany Foreign and Defense Ministers meeting, so-called 2+2, which took place online. And so I believe that today's topic, toward an intensified cooperation, common ground for Japan, Germany, and the partners, comes at exactly the right point. These days, the international community is facing various threats. The rule-based international order is being challenged. Japan and Germany, who are partners that share such values as democracy, human rights, and rule of law, need to maintain and strengthen this international order with other partner countries. The policy guideline for the Indo-Pacific that the government of Germany adopted last September proclaimed that principle of freedom of navigation, the rule of law, and connectivity. And this aligns with the view of Japan, which proposes a free and open Indo-Pacific. We greatly appreciate these guidelines. Last Friday, our Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide visited US and issued a joint statement with US President Joseph Biden, where the two countries advanced a shared vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific based on the commitment to universal values and common principles and the promotion of inclusive economic prosperity. In this regard, Japan welcomes, in particular, the decision of the government of Germany to dispatch a vessel of the German Navy to the Indo-Pacific region. And I understand that this initiative was discussed between German and US defense ministers last Tuesday on the occasion of the visit of US Secretary of Defense Lloyd J. Austin. We hope that Germany will include its activities in Indo-Pacific. Furthermore, the agreement on the protection of classified information was signed on March 22nd in terms of security cooperation between Japan and Germany. Based on this treaty, both sides agreed to advance their bilateral security policy cooperation, for instance, in the area of cooperation regarding defense equipment. It pleases me that Japan and Germany are increasing their security cooperation by this means. Last October, Prime Minister Suga announced that Japan would achieve net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2050. The key to this is groundbreaking innovations, for example, next generation solar cells or carbon recycling. We'd like to use our technological potential and act together as a driving force for a global green industry. This should put us in a position to open the way for creating a prosperous future society. In addition to such cooperation between Japan and Germany on the bilateral level that I've just referred to, Japan attached great importance to expanding cooperation with the European Union and NATO, which share the same fundamental values. With respect to economy, Japan as a flag bearer of free trade promotes economic partnerships. In February 2019, the Japan-EU Economic Partnership Agreement entered in force and has led to an increase in trade between Japan and the European Union. Regarding the Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games, while it's quite unfortunate that we are not able to welcome spectators from abroad, we are confident that we will be able to hold safe and secure games. So I wish successful results to all German athletes. I'd like to conclude my remarks with the wish that the world may soon vanquish the virus and that the cooperation between Japan and Germany can contribute to the post-corona development of the world. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Yanagi. You have, for your warm and encouraging words, I'm very sure you have touched upon many of the issues that we will further on discuss with our experts. Also, thank you for the longstanding support of the Japanese embassy in Berlin to the Konrad-Adenauer-Foundation. I like to continue now and call on the floor, and please turn on your camera, Professor Beate Neuss.
Thank you.
Good morning to Berlin.
Good morning to everybody. Your Excellency, Ambassador Yanagi, Your Excellency, Defense Attaché Pogson, honorable members of Parliament, distinguished speakers, dear participants. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your readiness as a representative of Japan and Germany to celebrate 160 years of Japanese-German democratic relations with us. And of course, thanks to you all for accepting our invitation to join us at this webinar series organized by the Embassy of Japan and the Konrad-Adenauer-Foundation. With an extensive look back on 160 years of bilateral relation, for sure fills another full series of events. We want to use this occasion, indeed, this anniversary, to look into the future together. No doubt, we find ourselves in times of most dynamic developments. This COVID-19 pandemic keeps the world on tenterhooks. Climate change and when environmental disasters threaten not only living spaces and global health. Digitalization and globalization connect us more than ever, independent of the number of kilometers between us, and create new opportunities as well as profound risks. And certainly, the rise of autocratic systems challenges the existing global rules-based order and the stability in the region. We see shifts in the balance of power, endangering free trade, sea lanes of communication, and in a broader spectrum, our common interests in rule of law and human rights, as the ambassador just mentioned a few minutes before. Together as trading nations, we should be prepared to face power asymmetries and violations of rules. There's no doubt we are in a systemic competition. Therefore, the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung has a deep interest in intensifying its bilateral and multilateral cooperation with democratic and rules advocating states in the region. Common interests are multifold: security and defense, climate and environment, digital development, and cybersecurity, to mention just a few. The last decade has seen an opening of several new offices in the Indo-Pacific region, including Japan and Australia, to create a better understanding of our partners and encourage communication on a regular and more immediate basis. As our Minister of Defense, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, in a joint webinar with her Japanese colleague, Minister Kishi, organized by the KAS last year, emphasized, I quote, "The future of the global order is decided in the Indo-Pacific." With the guidelines on the Indo-Pacific, the German government last September made its stance to be an active actor for and in a free and open Indo-Pacific, and a democratic ally for their like-minded partners, like Japan, Australia, and the United States. With the recently signed Military Information Protection Pact between Japan and Germany, the first 2+2 talks of the foreign and defense ministers, and the planned deployment of a German frigate this summer are important steps on intensifying the partnership between Japan and Germany, particularly in the area of security. At Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, we aim on strengthening democracy and intensifying relations with our like-minded partners to approach global challenges together. With more than 25 offices and regional programs in Asia and the Pacific, we build bridges between Germany, Europe, and the region. On a personal note, we do not only celebrate 160 years of diplomatic relations this year, we also celebrate the 10th anniversary of Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung Japan. The excellent team of the Country Office Japan and the regional program Social Economic Governance in Asia, based in Tokyo, focuses on the topics of regional security, new technologies, and the future of work, as well as joint solutions to social change. In 2012, I had the chance to visit Japan myself and discuss foreign policy. I'm delighted that since then, Germany, Europe, and Japan intensified their cooperation. The upcoming Indo-Pacific strategy by the European Union will be the next step to formalize and deepen our bilateral relations, particularly a closer cooperation in the domains of diversification of supply chains, technology exchange, and cybersecurity are promising areas. An essential aspect, moreover, is the strong embedment in multilateral cooperation, and thus I am more than happy to welcome our panelists from Australia and the United States. Working together, also with partners such as Asian states, South Korea, or New Zealand, in existing and new frameworks provides the momentum needed for stability, peace, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. Having said that, I particularly thank Ms. Rabea Brauer, Director of KIS Japan, and Yuriori Hamasaki from the Embassy of Japan for the organization of this celebration series. Let's hope to soon be able to meet without a screen again. And I'm looking forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Noyes. You have set the right tone for this event. Thank you for your insightful remarks. Of course, it is not just me and him. We have fleets of colleagues and people supporting us. And I'd like to extend that thanks to my team, to the team of the embassy, and to our team in Berlin. So I'd like to ask our speakers maybe to turn on the camera already so that we can move on to our next parts. And this will indeed be a special moment of the program because our next guest speaker, Minoru Kyuchi, Member of Parliament, spent big parts of his childhood in Germany. He worked at the Japanese embassy in Berlin and represents the German Parliamentary Friendship Group as General Secretary at the Diet, the National Diet of Japan, while having been State Minister of Foreign Affairs and Environment. Kyuchi-sensei bridges like no other, nobody that I would know, the relations between Germany and Japan, and he works tirelessly to lobby for deeper ties, knowing both sides so well. And I must mention that it was him who lobbied also for the finally 2+2 talks that were held just last week between Germany and Japan. So he mentioned that during our defense minister event that we recently had. So thank you for this. And you see, you made it happen. And I'm curious to hear today what personal thoughts and what ideas you have brought to our event. So Kyuchi-sensei, you have the floor. And of course, also happy birthday. In spite of your birthday, you are joining us today and making this event very special. So the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Brauer. Good morning to attendees in Germany and good evening to attendees in Japan. Let me introduce myself. My name is Minoru Kyuchi, and I'm a parliamentarian and a member of the House of Representatives of Japan. I used to serve as State Minister for Foreign Affairs and currently serve as General Secretary of the German-Japanese Parliamentarian Friendship Group. Please allow me to begin by expressing my gratitude for the honor of delivering a statement during this panel discussion celebrating 160 years of German-Japanese relations. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung and especially the head of its Tokyo offices, Ms. Rabea Brauer, for their immense contributions to German-Japanese relations. My personal connection with Germany goes back many years. Having spent 4.5 years in Germany as a child and another 5 years as a diplomat, adding up to almost 10 years of my life, I truly consider Germany my second home. I have worked towards the improvement of German-Japanese relations since joining the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1989, and I considered it my personal mission to continue to contribute to their further development for the rest of my life. In the face of many global challenges, including the fight against COVID-19, I believe we should use the celebration of 160 years of German-Japanese relations to inspire countries around the world through our example. Over the past 70 years, Germany and Japan have peacefully developed and become major economic powers. Their membership in the G7 and the G20 pays testimony to the important role of our two countries play in the global economic system. Furthermore, Germany and Japan share the same core values, including liberty, democracy, fundamental human rights, the rule of law, and the preservation of the global environment. As such, we, as well as many other countries in Asia Pacific, greatly welcome Germany's contributions in the region. In particular, Germany's publication of its guidelines for the Indo-Pacific in September last year is helping to ensure stability in the region. I look forward to working together even more closely to create a peaceful and prosperous future for the Indo-Pacific. Under Xi Jinping as General Secretary, China has amassed considerable military and economic power and uses them in an attempt to assert hegemony in the East and South China Seas. Expansionist moves by China, such as illegally entering other countries' territorial waters or erecting military installations on various disputed islands, are becoming more and more frequent. In Hong Kong, calls for democracy are violently suppressed. In China's western and northern provinces, minorities such as Uyghurs, Tibetans, and South Mongolians face severe persecution through arbitrary arrest, internment in re-education camps, torture, and execution. I consider it the responsibility of influential countries like Germany and Japan to stand up against injustices like these. So we must not turn a blind eye to China's misdeeds, even if it means foregoing some economic profit. For this reason, I was very pleased when I heard that the EU had unanimously decided to impose sanctions in response to China's human rights violations against Uyghurs. I believe Japan should do the same. To this end, at the Parliamentary Committee for Foreign Affairs, I recently proposed to our foreign minister that we enact similar sanctions. I'm delighted that progress is being made with respect to German-Japanese cooperation in the field of security and the realization of a free and open Indo-Pacific. Germany and Japan have concluded agreements on the transfer of defense equipment and technology and on the security of information. The German Navy and Japan Maritime Self-Defense Forces have conducted joint military exercises. Last week on April the 13th, yet another milestone was reached when, for the first time in history, the foreign and defense ministers of Germany and Japan held a 2+2 meeting. As a matter of fact, the idea of the 2+2 meeting came up at a webinar including the German and Japanese defense ministers in December last year, as Ms. Brauer mentioned, which had been jointly organized by the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung and the Japan's National Institute for Defense Studies. At that webinar, I suggested to Defense Minister Kramp-Karrenbauer that Germany and Japan should organize a 2+2, to which she replied that she was also in support of the idea and that she would approach the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs about it. The fact that it only took a few months until the 2+2 meeting was realized shows just how serious Germany is about cooperating with Japan on security. So we have achieved much already, but there is still a lot of unrealized potential. I look forward to the dispatch of a German frigate to the Indo-Pacific to joint military exercises and to cooperation on the surveillance of North Korean ships used for smuggling. Well, another domain that could greatly benefit from further German-Japanese cooperation is the environment. I was former state minister for the environment, by the way. Both Germany and Japan possess advanced technologies that will be indispensable in fighting climate change. Our two countries have committed to becoming carbon neutral by 2050. Thus, it is our responsibility to combine the efforts of our governments, our industries, our research institutes, and all of society to phase out the use of coal completely and to lead the world in the fight against climate change. As part of this, Japan is working hard to create the technology and infrastructure necessary for a hydrogen society. Last February, Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry and Ministry of the Environment, as well as Germany's Ministry of the Environment, Nature, Conservation and Nuclear Safety and Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy held a German-Japanese Environment and Energy Dialogue Forum. At the forum, the German and Japanese side shared their approaches towards phasing out coal and promoting the development of related technologies. They further discussed what steps need to be taken next. Climate change is a challenge that we can only overcome together as a species, and I look forward to seeing Germany and Japan lead humankind in this effort. Now I would like to address the issue of economics. I consider the German and Japanese economies to be alike in many ways. For example, both rely on manufacturing by SMEs as a backbone of the economy. With respect to German-Japanese cooperation in the field of technology, the mutual promotion of Germany's Industry 4.0 and Japan's Society 5.0 projects was reaffirmed during Chancellor Angela Merkel's visit to Japan in February 2019. Similar commitments were made to collaborative research in the fields of self-driving cars, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things. In Germany, Japanese corporations have established an R&D center on new materials for green vehicles, and in the construction sector, an innovation and technology center to advance digitalization. Germany and Japan are at the forefront of the fourth industrial revolution. I expect our two countries to blaze the trail to a prosperous future based on cutting-edge technologies. Though it has become difficult to visit one another in person due to the pandemic, German-Japanese cooperation is steadily moving forward in a number of fields. Not too long ago, many German politicians and entrepreneurs saw China as more important than Japan. In the same way, Japan used to prioritize its relationship with the United States over its relationship with Germany. Fortunately, these attitudes are beginning to change. I consider the 160th anniversaries German-Japanese diplomatic relations an opportunity for even closer cooperation. I have no doubt that by further deepening our ties, we will be able to assume a leading role on the global stage. I, for my part, as a Japanese member of parliament with a deep affection for Germany, will continue to work towards this vision of a bright common future for Germany and Japan. I would be honored if you worked on this future with me. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to deliver this statement, and I wish everyone a productive panel discussion. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very, very much, Kyuchi-sensei. I would love to engage you in further questions, for example, finding out what concrete mechanisms you see for a better institutionalized German-Japanese relation, but I hear we have to let you go and we also have to move on. So I deeply apologize that we move on with the program being a little over time. Thank you very much for your insightful comments. We will take them up in the future in both of the presentations. I'm very sure Mr. Kiesewetter raising already his hand, and I'm sure that Nakayama-sensei will pick up many of those. To our audience, I like to say that the points you raised on environment, digitalization, and technology cooperation will be a subject on Wednesday in our second session. So we would like to say thank you very much, and do have a good birthday today, and good luck with your further meetings. We may see you back in session and re-engage you in our discussions later on. Thank you so much, Kyuchi-sensei.
Thank you very much. Have a nice meeting. Goodbye. Sayonara.
Thank you.
Ciao.
So now it is time to hand over to Barbara and to our incoming statements by our parliamentarian, Mr. Kiesewetter, and by Secretary of State and MP Nakayama Sensei. So Barbara, over to you. You're in charge now.
Thank you very much, Rabia. And also from my side, a very big thank you to all of you for joining us today, and particularly to our honorable members of parliament that joined us today on this session. Welcome Nakayama Sensei and welcome Mr. Kiesewetter. Before we start in the discussion, I of course want to encourage all our panelists as well, but also our viewers to actually submit their questions in the question and answer box on the Zoom. I want to first introduce you, Nakayama Sensei. You join us today as a member of the House of Representatives for the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, but you moreover serve as State Minister for the Ministry of Defense and as Senior Vice Minister for the Cabinet Office. In the outstanding political career, Nakayama Sensei, among others, was Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs. His keen interest and his deep expertise in security and defense cooperation does not only show in his previous position as Director of the House of Representatives Security Committee. He, moreover, is a strong force in advancing and intensifying defense cooperation between Japan and Germany. And on a personal note, I am very proud to mention that Nakayama Sensei is a strong supporter of COS Tokyo and also closely collaborated with us on the mentioned highly important webinar between our defense ministers. Thank you very much for joining us today. On the German side, I welcome one of the most influential and knowledgeable foreign and security politicians in Germany, Mr. Kiesewetter. He's a member of the German Parliament for the CDU and a former General Staff Officer of the German Federal Armed Forces. Among others, he serves as Special Representative for the CDU-CSU in the Committee on Foreign Affairs. He is a member of the German delegation at the Interparliamentary Conference for the Common Foreign and Security Policy and the Common Security and Defense Policy. Concluding, he's this strong voice when it comes to Germany's partnerships with like-minded countries and is a driving force towards a more self-conscious Germany in a rules-based world. Thank you very much for being with us today. First, I would like to give the floor now to Nakayama Sensei for your incoming statement.
So, guten Morgen. My name is Yasuhide Nakayama. And from now, I can only speak in German this little. So from now, I'm going to speak in English. By the way, Miss Barbara, thank you for introducing me. You are perfect because I don't know how you get my intelligence and biography, but I think you are more than Google, Miss Google. Thank you. And also, Rabea, always thank you very much for meeting lots of time in Tokyo, even in a COVID-19 attacking from China, Wuhan. But we so much against and fight against those viruses. So thank you very much and inviting me. And also thank you very much, Ambassador Yanagi. We really trust you from Tokyo, from Japan. And Mr. Yanagi, Ambassador Yanagi is, introducing Japan to the Germany. And also he is now, I'm so sure that tackling the issue of the lots of things in German. So thank you, everyone. So we believe Japan and Germany has an important partnership. Our two countries are economic powerhouse, leading Asia and Europe, tackling various tasks and challenges, including security in the international community based on our shared values, such as democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Additionally, through several dialogues from summit level to staff level, Japan and Germany has agreed to advance our cooperation in the field of security and defense, as well as cooperate with each other in order to achieve the vision of free and open Indo-Pacific. In this environment, Germany published policy guidelines for Indo-Pacific in September last year. Japan agrees with the principle of freedom of navigation, rule of law, and inclusivity as outlined in this guideline. And Japan welcomes Germany's increased involvement in the Indo-Pacific region. Needless to say, Japan and Germany had several defense exchanges in various levels, ranging from cabinet minister level to unit level. For example, in February last year, former Defense Minister Kono attended the Munich Security Conference, which was the first time in 10 years for a Japanese defense minister to attend the conference. He also had the opportunity to have a meeting with Defense Minister Kramp-Karrenbauer. And personally, I also invited as a cybersecurity conference held at the same city, the Munich. And minister level interaction has been developing as fast as never before. Since Minister Kishi assumed his office as defense minister, he held a BTC with Minister Kramp-Karrenbauer in November, as well as a discussion during Japan-Germany Defense Minister Forum held by Konrad-Adenauer-Foundation and the National Institute for Defense Studies in December. Finally, just last Tuesday on 30th April, we held the first ever Japan-Germany Foreign and Defense Ministers meeting, 2+2. Unit-to-unit level exchange has also a long history. Japan Marine Self-Defense Force ships visited Germany 10 times, and German Navy ships visited to Japan 6 times. In addition, Japan and Germany has conducted 9 goodwill trainings since 1987. As for recent exchange, German military band participated into Japan Self-Defense Forces Marching Festival in 2019. Moreover, German government announced its plan to dispatch German frigate to Indo-Pacific region in March this year. Japan welcomes Germany's growing engagement in the Indo-Pacific region when security environment surrounding our two countries is becoming severe and common values Japan and Germany are facing huge challenges as discussed in Japan-Germany 2+2 meetings. During 2+2 meeting, the Japan side raised the possibility of bilateral cooperation on the occasion of the deployment of the German Navy frigate, including joint exercise, as well as monitoring and surveillance activities against illicit ship-to-ship transfer by North Korea-related vessels. The 4 ministers shared the view to continue to coordinate with each other on this matter. Furthermore, the 4 ministers welcomed the signing and entry into force of the Japan-Germany agreement on the security of information last month, and shared the view to further promote bilateral security cooperation under this agreement, including cooperation in the area of defense equipment. Strategically, it is significant achievement that both countries confirmed the close cooperation on this milestone year, marking the 160th anniversary of Japan-Germany friendship. Though we still have difficulties to conduct face-to-face meetings due to COVID-19, Japan Defense Ministry and JSDF will further promote Japan-Germany defense cooperation and exchanges by taking advantage of policy guidelines for Indo-Pacific announced by Germany. So thank you very much for inviting me. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for this highly interesting input. We will dive in the discussion in a second. Before that, I would like to hand the floor to you, Mr. Kiesewetter.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Mrs. Völkel and Mrs. Brauer. I really feel honored, dear Excellencies, dear Ambassador Yanagi, and dear Excellency, Secretary of State Nakayama. Good to see you again. I'm really grateful and I feel honored and really delighted. Konbanwa, domo arigato gozaimasu. Dear auditory, I believe after 160 years of German-Japanese friendship with strong commitment to our shared values and interests, it is really also our meeting today a sign that we are willing to enforce our close ties. And in a simultaneity of crisis we are faced with, it is also a good sign to our partners in values that we, for more than 12,000 kilometers apart, are sticking close together to try to give an offer to our neighbors and friends to resolve the challenges we have. We find ourselves in the threshold of a new age. New directions for global order are set in the Indo-Pacific guidelines of Germany, which is really a systematic change of our pursuit of political dynamics. And we feel ourselves in a systemic contention as well as competition. So we are together to deepen our cooperation and collaboration in a range of areas. The idea is to actively shape the future rules of conduct, and we appreciate Japan as an especially important, reliable, bi- and multilateral partner in Asia. So we have so many in common, and Japan for us is a successful pillar of stability, freedom, and value-based politics as policies. And as Mr. Kyuchi has mentioned, we, in his clear words about Chinese policies and about small and medium enterprises, we have so many in common. Last week, I had the great chance to meet in person the new Japanese ambassador, Mr. Hidenao Yanagi. And he gave me some very touching papers, 2 newspapers, showing a relative of mine, my great-grand-uncle, who died in 1917 in Oita. So my brother is serving also in Japan as a military attaché. So there are also close personal ties. And I think it is of utmost importance that we rely on personal ties, common values, and common programs as well. So I am strongly convinced that it is shared interest to cooperate. And I would like to give you some snapshots on some areas of cooperation. And after that, I would like to go into a more detail on current developments. We have exchange programs for specialized staff and gerontology. Also, artificial intelligence and research is a topic of high importance for us. Smart cities cooperate in 5G. We have close cooperation on vaccines. There is climate change, and Prime Minister Suga announced greenhouse gas neutrality until 2050. So also something what we have in common. The 2+2 initiative, with the meeting of Foreign Minister Motegi and Defense Minister Kishi via VTC last week, underlines the close and trusting relations we have, and we want to intensify. Also, the meeting with our Defense Minister Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer. She is a very convinced partner and friend of Japan, and we really should, and you could rely on her. The Indo-Pacific guidelines, that's really, as I mentioned in the beginning, a paradigm shift in German foreign and security policy, because we also mention armaments cooperation. We mention closer cooperation, not only on the scientific area and in the economic field, but also in the security field. Japan, as an anchor of stability, is one of our most important allies. And it is also expressing our willingness towards strengthened cooperation. The comprehensive and inclusive character is far more than military cooperation, but it is even military cooperation, something which we abstained for years. So we are consciously exploring non-traditional security issues like cyber, infrastructure, economical security. And also our confidentiality agreement is a good sign for our mutual trust. We need a long-term engagement in the region. The same as Japan is engaged in Northern Africa and in close cooperation with Europe. We have to face the Chinese challenge. I hope that our signal encourages Japan to intensify also its engagement in multilateral institutions. Together and combined, we make these institutions stronger. We need also to intensify our work, our German work in the European institutions, and to strengthen the understanding on the European side for the Japanese security needs. Our goal is to introduce the European Union strategy by fall 2021. And it's also a clear signal that the European Union turns towards the Indo-Pacific to protect, together with the United States, the sea lines of communication. The frigate Bayern. As a former military officer, I'm really happy that this frigate will visit your country, your harbors. 160 years after the signature of the Prussian-Japanese friendship, this is really important. And the last harbor visit was 2002, so nearly 20 years ago. It's a strong sign taking up a long tradition of cooperation. From August 21 to February 22, the route will be the Indian subcontinent, the Malacca Strait, Australia, Japan, and the Korean Peninsula. And I would also like to mention there are some concerns, and I raised it also to your ambassador. I am not happy with the visit in China. And there is also a different sign. We are only visiting the harbor, but we are staying in Japan. And it is up to our coalition partner who has tried to bring a visit in the Chinese harbor in. But I'm not satisfied with that. We are invited by your country, we stand at your side, and we don't want to water down this visit. Our interests are compliance to the international law, free trade routes, territorial integrity, strengthening of democratic partners. And this needs a long-term engagement, also in the Indo-Pacific, despite the plethora of challenges in our own neighborhood like Ukraine or the Near Middle East. We need to emphasize the multilateral dimension. It's the contribution to monitoring of UN sanctions against North Korea, the passage to the South Chinese Sea. And we have to look for the future. We need to consider European solutions and European commitments for a long-term and permanent engagement. The confidentiality agreement, it really strengthens the cooperation of intelligence service. And I'm heading the Committee for Intelligence Services in our parliament. And it's really a great pleasure for me that we strengthen here and foster our cooperation. Germany is the 9th country to sign such an agreement with Japan. It's a sign of confidence. Germany itself has about 50 agreements, but I think nothing was so important than this in the last years. We need to identify possibilities for cooperation on intersection of security policy and economy. This should become a flagship project. And we see the whole area of trade in the Indo-Pacific. Our interests are free and secure sea lines of communications, open markets, sustainable supply chains, and also international climate protection. The European Union-Japan Free Trade Agreement as of December 2019 is offering new impulses. The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership program needs to continue work on framework with partners like Australia, New Zealand, and in the future also India. The European-Asian Strategic Partnership is an important step for both sides. So we need to invest in diversification in the Southeast Asia. So the goal is a framework for stronger diversification of our economic relations together with Japan. So there is no unilateral dependence. In general, we want freedom and security. Armament dynamics in the Indo-Pacific are alarming. So we could learn mutually from our experiences with arms control, for example, in the OSCE and in NATO. I don't want to conclude without mentioning China. We need to acknowledge that the global order cannot work around China. China urges us to intensify cooperation further and seek collaboration with like-minded partners in the Indo-Pacific. We need to define our capabilities and invest our capabilities, and we need to better combine our interests. It's military communication, it's intelligence service communication, and it is also fostering the free markets. It's an ambivalent relationship towards China as partner, competitor, and systemic rival, and I do not hope as a threat in the future. We need to acknowledge our own defaults. We need to take a more assertive approach towards China. We need to argue for our interests and values. We need also to defend the freedom of Hong Kong and Taiwan, not by military means, but by standing fast in the international bodies with the United Nations, and not to make us too dependent from economy to accept that what is going on in Taiwan, in Tibet, with the Uyghurs, in Hong Kong, in the Senkaku Islands, in the sovereignty in the Japanese Sea. So we need to take a closer look on perspective of our partners in the region and not taking on Chinese views on ourselves. So to conclude, I'm grateful that we can intensify our cooperation despite COVID. We need to cooperate more strongly in the multilateral initiatives. We can support each other, also in the international fora. And we all are encouraging and inviting our Japanese friends to increase their engagement in our area of interest, like the Western Balkans or the Sahel zone. So we could also think of a security agreement in the cooperation with the framework of the European Union and the common foreign and security policy. There is a lot to do. We have a lot of inspiring ideas, but the most which is combining us is our long-lasting friendship for more than 5 generations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for these catching and also highly interesting and knowledgeable insights, Mr. Kiesewetter. Nakayama Sensei shows his gratitude as well, so thank you very much. Let's start a bit deeper into the topics that you mentioned. Nakayama Sensei, of course, you mentioned the deployment, and Mr. Kiesewetter, you did as well, of the frigate Bayern. Based on the recently held 2+2 talks, where naval cooperation was a big part of the discussion as well, what are Japan's expectations towards Germany and towards Germany in the European Union for further steps on the cooperation in that sense?
Are you asking me? Okay, good. So thank you very much for your question. And I think we need to stabilize the ocean, and we need a rule of law in our region, especially in Indo and Pacific. For example, you already know that the Chinese PLA activities, expansionism, especially towards Pacific Ocean, and they are building and constructing inside of the South China Sea lots of man-made islands, which we say artificial islands, and the longest runway for the fighter jet or bombing airplane is almost 4 kilometers, 3,750 kilometers. I mean the meters. So those kind of runway, they already have at least three runway inside of the South China Sea. And also there is the Jiang class and the Shang class, which is a nuclear submarine constructed by the Chinese Navy. They can carry nuclear weapons and warheads. And they used to have JL-2 missiles, which range about 7,000 or 8,000 kilometers, or maximum maybe 12,000 kilometers. But now, they created the new one, updated one. It's called JL-3 missiles. A JL-3 missile range about 14,000 kilometers. So if the Chinese submarine go deep under to the South China Sea, they can aim from South China Sea, aiming White House in Washington, D.C. So, the White House, even former President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden already, targeted by the Chinese submarine. So this is the truth. And also, Madam News-san mentioned about the cyber attacks. So the cyber security is, we need a friend. And also the environmentally, geopolitically, even far away, this is a borderless technology. So we have to make friend and also the alliance. And even I met with the Huawei guys, and they said, they asked me how to update the 5G tech in UK, because the United Kingdom already used their technology as a facility, about 35%. And Mr. Huawei told me, in Germany, Volkswagen asked Huawei to provide the technology. So in the factory, so we have to clean up all the Chinese made those facilities. For that, we have to prepare the new tech infrastructure to build, to manufacture the new tech, even the chips or the every new tech supply chain within democratic countries. So we have to make a strong ties between the democratic countries. And so we need the Germany and Japan cooperate and the cooperation more strongly, more accelerated, because we also fear and feel the threat because of the collaboration between China and Russia. Russia and China flew bombers in the sky above the Japan Sea. And they flew lots of times around us. And of course, Taiwan, lots of Chinese fighter jets cross over their edges, kind of like a daily basis. So those kind of threats, not just made by Chinese PLA, but collaborating with the Russians. This is the most careful, and we have the tensions about. And especially, we hope that we could have Tokyo Olympic and Paralympics last year, 2020. But unfortunately, this year, July 23rd, we are going to have Olympic and Paralympics. But Russians attacking not just the election of the United States presidential election, but also some Russian hackers attacking the past Olympic Games and Paralympics. So we have to care, even in the cyber field, about the collaboration attack from several countries. So we have to care about this. And 2017, Russia made a new internet cables from the Russian side across the border of the North Korea. So now the North Korean hacker team called Razals can select the either way, through via China or through by the Russia. So Russians gave the advantage to select the way, which cables, if the North Korean special force, special cyber attacking team, they can, select. So there is no, benefit compared to China towards North Korea between the Russia. So this kind of collaboration and the new balance between North Korea Russia, and China, they are like teasing each other inside of our region. So we need Germany to cooperate, and also the EU. I think EU can act more aggressively towards this collaboration movement, and we have to, stop that terrifying, future story. Especially Ukraine, Crimea. We already had experience in 2014. They did the cyber attack towards Crimea and grabbed the area, and they attack the IXP, Internet Exchange Point. So, for example, why Chinese PLA, why Chinese government so aggressive to grab Hong Kong? I think Hong Kong has a very big hub of internet cables through the Pacific Ocean, through the Indian Ocean. Every cable get together under the Hong Kong Sea, Hong Kong Ocean. So now they get Hong Kong. They can directly chew all the information directly from the cable, I think. So those kind of fear, and also the the image have to share with the European Union and also Germany. And the other thing is the space, outer space. The Chinese launched the satellite, and also they shoot down the satellite, which they launched. So the space activity from the communist country is also terrified. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for bringing in the future that we are also discussing today. We have cyberspace, we have space as domains for increased cooperation between Germany and Japan, but also other like-minded democracies in the region. And with that, I hand over to Rabea to welcome our further countries on the panel.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Barbara. We have now arrived at our panel discussion, and to open the floor further, we have invited external views from the US and from Australia. And whilst both are partners in the Quad, each is an individual important ally to Germany and Japan, and all four countries have in common a free and prosperous Indo-Pacific, multilateral engagement, free trade, and peace and stability, what we have heard just now. I am very honored to give the floor first to Ken Weinstein, who knows Asia and Japan very well as former president and currently as the Walter Stern Distinguished Fellow at the Hudson Institute. And Ken will be followed by Captain Poxon, who, after countless important and leading deployments, serves now at Australia's embassy to Germany as the defense attaché. Russia was a big keyword just now. Thank you, Nakayama Sensei. I'll be thrilled to hear the US view on this. We keep reading about the Biden administration dealing with Russia. But dear Ken, following the Suga-Biden meeting, you wrote that Japan is now the most important ally to the US. The meeting between the two statesmen visibly closed the ranks on Taiwan, on defense commitments and necessary deterrence. And you brought Australia in your article into the picture on cybersecurity and energy cooperation in the future. Germany, on the other hand, is determined to look east and engage in the crucial region of the Indo-Pacific. So here are my questions to you. How does the US look at Germany's strategy and the future engagement that it promised to have? And what role will the US play in the future in this region? And further to this, how does the US plan to cooperate with Germany and other European nations to engage? Ken, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for staying up. And I hope we have you still here on the panel.
Great. Well, thank you, Rabea. Honored to be here. Trotz der frühen Stunde bin ich ganz geehrt, hier zu sein. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu. Let me note this is an extraordinary panel. I want to thank Nakayama Sensei, Kizaveta Sensei for your very insightful remarks, and really want to praise our Hudson Institute's partners at the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung for organizing this terrific event. Let me begin sort of with a big picture. Prime Minister Suga first foreign visitor to the White House under President Biden. This was no accident. Prime Minister Abe was the first to visit Donald Trump after the 2016 election. Japan has simply become the United States' closest interlocutor on the world stage. Both governments sense this deeply. And I think in this area, there's going to be significant continuity between the Biden-Suga era and the Trump-Abe era. This is a genuine partnership, one with deep bipartisan support, and with both countries learning from each other. We forged national security strategies together to meet the China challenge. And most importantly, in 2017, we announced our transformative free and open Indo-Pacific strategy based on Shinzo Abe's August 2016 free and open Indo-Pacific vision to promote security cooperation, the rule of law, freedom of navigation, trade, high standard international development, and the like. And we also changed the name of our Pacific Command, our most important combatant command, to the Indo-Pacific Command, in part to recognize what Abe had stressed since his first term as prime minister, which is the growing centrality of both the Indian and Pacific Oceans to international security and global commerce, the need to align our efforts much more closely, especially with India, but also with Australia, in what's become the whole of society competition with China. And here, geography really is strategy. You look at the world very differently from Asia Pacific to Indo-Pacific, using Abe's 2007 description of the broader Asia, including East Asia, Southeast Asia, the Western Pacific to the Indian Ocean. This has deep implications for our troop deployments, our focus, and also the fact we recognize, as has been mentioned, this is a cross-domain challenge from maritime to air to land, space, cyber, even the home front. And again, we learned from Japan once again in trying to meet the challenge of Belt and Road by restructuring our foreign development assistance, creating whole of government cooperation initiatives with Japan and with Australia on energy, cybersecurity, uncompromised digital architecture, and the like in our own countries and in the Indo-Pacific more broadly. And Japan, in turn, upped its security focus with an increased security cooperation with the Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, obviously the US and beyond. Lastly, the Trump administration helped revitalize the Quad grouping of the four great democracies of the Indo-Pacific, Australia, India, Japan, and the US, reinvigorated for the first time in a decade and raised to the ministerial level in 2019 with a Quad Plus meeting as well. I think the Biden team recognizes its debt in this area, and they've admitted as such. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Indo-Pacific Coordinator Kirk Campbell have acknowledged their debt to the Trump administration here. Biden and Suga have built on this firm foundation through the head of state meeting of the Quad in March, held online, which produced this important new initiative to distribute 1 billion COVID vaccines in Southeast Asia. They're likely to meet at the G7 summit. And the Quad lies at the heart of the free and open Indo-Pacific. There's no doubt that the US and Japan are at the heart of the Quad as the two most technologically advanced democracies, first and third largest economies. And we saw in the joint statement offered by Biden and Suga very strong statements of concern about Chinese behavior in the Indo-Pacific, and also acknowledgement that Japan needs to up its deterrent and response capabilities in response to the alarming evolution of the strategic balance there. Important cooperation, as we also saw on through the core partnership on ICT, supply chains, next generation telephony and the like. Clean energy and renewables. So what's Germany's role in all this? Let me shift gears. Look, I think, first of all, we welcome in the United States very positive steps by Germany in the 2+2 to step up defense and military cooperation. Anything Germany does with Japan helps, and I want to praise Kiesewetter for his remarks about the Chinese port visit, which I agree with the United States would rather not have the harbor visit by the Bayern. Anything that Germany does, whether it's regard illegal stopping illegal ship trade with North Korea or beyond, it's important. It also reduces the burden on the United States and Japan in this region, which we really do want a networked alliance that goes beyond the Indo-Pacific in this region. Secondly, if I can speak honestly, I think we'd like to have, we are concerned in the United States about German public opinion seeking at points to be some sort of a midpoint between China and the United States. This is changing, it's an evolution, but there have been some disturbing public opinion polls out of Germany. There are concerns. I think we'd also like Germany to go beyond its policy guidelines on the Indo-Pacific to take a tougher public stance on China and the security threat it poses in the Indo-Pacific. We're starting to hear some of this language, but we'd like things to go further. And I think the new German government that comes into power may take a bolder step here. Lastly, let me note, given the China challenge, and I also second all that Nakayama Sensei said about the Russia challenge and why this is so critical to Japan, why it's so critical to the United States as well. But given the China challenge and China's attempts to redraw borders, I think we, the United States, Japan, the Quad countries and beyond, need to start to build up a genuine Indo-Pacific, free and open Indo-Pacific strategic community, which is a challenge not unlike that of building up a North Atlantic strategic community in the late 1940s to meet the Soviet threat. The Quad's going to be at the heart of this pluralist community, but we need our partners from outside the region. And here, I think Germany can play a critical role. I don't think anyone expects the free and open Indo-Pacific community to have regional integration on the model of the EU, but I think we need to learn from EU best practices, such as the creation of an innovation fund, which the EU has done well with, for the Quad countries and beyond. And I think that there are specific areas such as these that Germany could play a unique contribution to. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ken. That was a tour de force, tour de table, I have to say. You raised all the important points. Before I delve into further questions, I have noted down a few. I want to swing the globe again and go over to Captain Poxon to Australia and ask him what is Australia's perspective on the changing power dynamics in the region, and how would Australia prefer to collaborate with Germany and Japan and further partners? Pretty much mirrored your remarks, Ken. So, Ben, where are you?
Yes, I'm right here.
Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you very much, distinguished guests. And I find myself amongst both literary and political greats. So I'm quite humbled to be on the same panel as the experts that have already spoken. I must say that we're in a changing time with great economic potential, but also with great economic potential becomes a lot of security threats. I'm happy to answer your question about how Australia sees those security threats under the lens of power, which you pushed quite nicely. When we try and unpack an issue like this, most of us online would probably reach to our bookshelves and have a look over the last 160 years, or in fact over the last 2,000 years, and say, what are the books that we'd grab off the shelves to help us understand the theories of what dynamics are happening in the Indo-Pacific at the moment. Many of the realist theorists, because you brought up power, would look to people like Gilpin and Jarvis and Thucydides and all of these greats to help us understand what's happening. But we need to be careful not to continue to look through the lens of some of these theorists, or we might find ourselves in great power conflict. So what are the power dynamics that we see through some of these lenses from an Australian perspective? We obviously heard today that the great power tensions are rising, particularly between China and the US. We're seeing more assertive looking great powers looking to exert their influence. We're looking towards China to look at a greater pursuit of influence in the region by establishing military bases, as been established and talked about earlier today. We're looking at an environment that has the emergence of new complex non-geographic threats. And we're talking about cyber and space, areas and domains where rules and norms are not mature as other spaces. We're looking at a rapid pace of military modernisation, and that's really been underpinned by long periods of economic growth in the region. And we're also seeing the military modernisation of North Korea's missile and nuclear programs as well, underpinned by state fragility, challenges to the rules-based order, and enduring threats of terrorism in the region as well. So when we look back at our great theorists and you look at the fear, the honour and the interest of Thucydides, you actually start to understand the region and how power creates the uncertainty that then propagates into fear. And that's something that we all need to acknowledge as leaders, but have the temperament to be able to address it and see how through history we've actually been able to create security and prosperity. And that's where I like to draw the linkage between the last 160 years and today and into the future. We're a learning society. We're a people that can learn from our pasts rather than rather to continue some of the power dynamics and how they've ended in the last couple of 100 years. So I would say that in doing that, our starting point is actually at the end point. Our starting point would be, what does Australia, or what does the states inside the Indo-Pacific, what is the end state, or what does it look like that what we want? And I think it's important that we need to talk about that openly. Australia supports a free and open, prosperous Indo-Pacific. We're keen to maintain a region which the rule of law prevails. The freedom of navigation is protected. Everyone gets a voice through multilateral forums. ASEAN remains central, and human rights are protected. In short, and indifferent to your question about power, we want a region where rules and norms are the binding dynamic, not power. To do this, and to achieve this, we need to shape our strategic environment through relationships. And in saying that, and to answer the second half of your question, our close partners, Japan, in many ways agree. We have a free trade agreement. We have a massive trade relationship where Japan's actually Australia's second largest export market. We're both key players to ASEAN. We coordinate across the region in a wide range of issues, including the development and assistance of infrastructure. As we've mentioned, we're both participating in the Quad, and we're well on our way to reaching a bilateral status of forces agreement with Japan. To underline all of this with Japan, Prime Minister Morrison was the first leader to visit Japan after the election of Prime Minister Suga. It would be wrong of me not to mention the rise of China in the response to the question you have before I move on to Germany. One of the things that binds us together about the region is what we focus on and what we are in favour of, and we want to avoid disagreements. In that context, it's important for me to say that Australia seeks a good bilateral relationship with China. We welcome China's rise, and we think it's appropriate that China has a greater role in the region appropriate to its development. We certainly have some points of disagreement with China, but we don't see that as a blockage at all to having a successful bilateral relationship of mutual advantage, and we're working to achieve that with Beijing. If we move on to the last part of your question about Germany, as between Australia and Japan, we share close views on German perspectives of the Indo-Pacific, and we welcome the Indo-Pacific guidelines that were released last year. We also welcome the deployment and look forward to hosting the frigate Bayern to the region, including 2 port visits into Australia, into Perth and Darwin. For Australia, German brings many of the public goods that we need more of in the Indo-Pacific. A focus on rules and rights, a multilateral mindset, a strong development assistant capabilities, and capabilities of infrastructure. Excuse me. While we understand Germany has much to focus on, including in its own region and abroad, we also know that the issues that confront our region are mostly for the region to resolve. But Germany has big interest in our region. Over 10% of its trade passes through the South China Sea. And its engagement will bring reinsurance to the states of the region and support for the public goods that is what our region really needs. Germany can make a great contribution, and we welcome the frigate and further both military and diplomatic engagements in the region. And so sort of the region of Australia and Germany's Indo-Pacific strategy or guidelines are the sort of things that Australia and Japan wants to maintain and develop. So thank you very much for your question. I hope that answers both the power dynamics and also the relationship with Germany and Japan.
Thank you very much. If anybody of our panelists would like to jump in, please do so. I like to start off with a question to Mr. Kiesewetter, but it's probably of interest of all our panelists, and I like to take up Ken's comment for this. Ken, you said you're worried about, the US is worried about the public opinion towards China in Germany. Now, we all know we are facing elections, Japan does, and Germany does, and it has glimpsed through in Mr. Kiesewett's speech as well. We expect certain shifts of faces in coalitions, though, of course, nothing is certain yet, thank goodness. I would like to ask Mr. Kiesewetter, would any election outcome change the course of Germany's foreign policy course on any level that has been established? You mentioned the ship, and we all know about the debate. So this is indeed a certain worry that our partners here in the region should have. So maybe a quick intervention from you, Mr. Kiesewetter.
Mm-hmm. Very brief, yes. Thank you so much. I believe that as regards foreign policy and security policy, Germany is very reliable, independent who is governing, if in the governing parties are the Social Democrats, the Liberals, or the Greens. So even if there was to be what we call a red light, a green light, or a red light, it would function. Except for a combination with the very left party, the so-called left. But I believe that our country is very stable and could also afford a change of government in this context. But I would like to foster this, or to emphasize this in two regards. First of all, every government will accept a close transatlantic relationship with the United States. Without the United States, it will not function. And we need to implant the same thinking regarding our close relationship with Japan, Australia, and perhaps in the future also India, to contain not only China, but to strengthen the resilience of multilateralism. And my second remark is, as regards China or even Russia, we need to define areas of resilience where no Huawei or CTE device is included. This means interoperability of military communications, command and control. This means also air defense, and this means cybersecurity in a very narrow way regarding the governmental functions. So with these two remarks, Rabea, back to you, but I would like really to comfort you all that please keep the trust into German foreign politics. It might change in the domestic politics, but not in our foreign politics.
That's exactly what we wanted to hear. Thank you very much. Ken, I hope it was assuring to you as well. I like to...
Yes, it is true. It is not only wrong, it's true.
I like to have one more question before I hand over back to Barbara and her follow-up comments. I like to stick with the Quad. It has been mentioned by you, Ben, by you, Ken, and of course by Nakayama Sensei. And it was said that the Quad countries and beyond. So I like to define or hear you to define, maybe Ken, this question to you, what is beyond? Is there room for other institutionalized partners in the Quad, or is this a rather exclusive club? I know it isn't, because we're talking about prosperous Indo-Pacific, and this cannot be upheld with only the four. But how do you define, what do you wish for partnerships? How should they be formed that would support the Quad or even enlarge the quadrilateral security dialogue?
Yeah, no, thank you, Rebecca. Look, I think, look, we looked at the Quad Plus grouping, which obviously includes South Korea, and it's important, if we can, to get the South Koreans into a Quad Plus grouping. Obviously, other nations, New Zealand, part of the Quad Plus. I think we're obviously would look at the Philippines as well to be part of that. And as the Quad goes on, I think former Deputy Secretary of State Steve Biegun talked about the Quad as kind of a nascent NATO. I think Steve may have been ahead of where the Quad is. It is not an alliance. It is an informal grouping, but it's going to become increasingly more formal as time goes on. And this scientific cooperation is important. The vaccine initiative is incredibly important. I think over time we're going to have privileged Quad partners, and we would certainly welcome Germany. The UK is obviously, with its new Indo-Pacific strategy, increasingly focused and increasingly shifting away from its focus on China, recognizing the China challenge. And the UK is obviously seeking to join the CPTPP, so it's quite likely to be the next major Quad Plus partner.
Thank you very much, Ken. Any additions maybe from our panelists? If that's not the case, I'll go over to Barbara for her set of questions to you.
Yeah, maybe jumping in for the last one of the questions. One of the major points in the German guidelines is the stronger collaboration in multilateral institutions such as the before mentioned NATO. Japan and Australia are like-minded partners across the globe of NATO. And I would like to ask Nakayama Sensei, what do you expect of Germany? How do you want this stronger cooperation within NATO for Japan to look like?
Thank you very much. Japan and Germany and another country also who manufactured something and who is going to try to sell to the overseas. I think everyone has the same feeling. China is a very good customer by economic means because of big population and they can money to afford buying power. But this time, after Trump administration, he raised up the issue, especially like Huawei issue, 5G issue, tech issue, and he really strongly against Chinese policy. And after that, the administration changed in the United States. But President Joe Biden, he said he's going to change 99% of what the Trump has done. But 1% has not been changed. It's Chinese policy towards Taiwan policy to protect the democratic countries. So now the economic investors or the people who run the business and selling the overseas, the CEOs have to think about the politics, not just making profit, the money from the market. Why don't they to look another country like a big population like India to they also have a buying power, and so we need not just the politics, but we need the merchant, the CEOs who run the businesses have to need to cooperate. How we have to think against the Chinese policy, and the security environment. I'm so sure that it will affect to the business if once China and Taiwan or Japan, Russia, US, another country fight like a war. It's going to be risk, and all the stock dropping down, all the businesses will be stopped. So economy really related to the politics. So this time the field of the business partners who love democratic country have to need to think about those kind of security inside of the business, especially like a supply chain, but also the market itself to focusing on. So I hope the German business community have to collaborate with the Japanese business community and get together. We have to think, where is the next market and what is the target to keep the alliance of the security and growing up the economy. So we have to think the new market to build together. And if we need the tech, we have to think and collaborate with German, Japan, new tech as a provider, because German people are very smart and very good at to manufacturing like a Porsche, like a Mercedes-Benz, Bosch, the big, very traditional electric things, or you guys are so smart. Japanese is also, making good at the small stuffs. So when we collaborate, those kind of, the technicians' ideas, maybe we can again get together in the economic field to provide the lots of ideas and also the facility, equipment to all over the world. So we have to, be strong to ties, enhancing the communication, not just the politics. Thank you.
Thanks for making that shift also to geo-economics, definitely a topic to discuss further. As we want to stay very timely, before handing over to Mr. Hefele, I would like to give, is Mr. Kiesewetter still with us? Yes, to have one last question from the audience, which is the visit to a Chinese port by the frigate Bayern already confirmed, and is it gonna happen? I think we cannot catch Mr. Kiesewetter anymore on this, as far as I see. However, we will deliver the answer to this in our event report that you will all receive. Before we end, I would like to ask you all to take a small note for a goodbye picture. I think we already took some in the meanwhile, but let's give a quick smile to the panel. Good. And then let's hand over to our head of COST Asia Pacific Department in Berlin, Dr. Peter Hefele.
Barbara, thank you very much. I'm very glad that we could organize on the occasion of 160 years of diplomatic relations this 2 days seminar. It's the key objective of this seminar to look deeper into each other's perspective and to go beyond even bilateral relations with our partners in Europe and in Asia Pacific. We aim at developing a multifaceted awareness of the groundbreaking shifts in geopolitics, in demography, in narratives. And of course, we would like to provide substantial information and advice for policymakers, governments, in the parliaments, and civil society. And against this background, I would like to just sum up some of the insights and topics discussed. It is indeed it's a timely manner to get these discussions on the ground. It's common challenges, but as has been mentioned, also a lot of opportunities to deepen, to go way beyond traditional cooperations. It's not just military, it's technology, it's demography, it's narratives at the very end. It has to be led by inspiring examples, as Excellency Nakayama mentioned. That is, I think, the way we Germans and Japanese in our regions have to achieve. The momentum has speed up. We have to contribute, and I think institutions such as Konrad-Adenauer-Foundation are a good way and good position to support this. We have entered a new age. This is something Ken Weinstein mentioned if he talked about geography strategy. It's still territorial to some extent, but as Ben also mentioned, it goes beyond geography. If you took, for example, the space of cybersecurity. So this is things which we have to learn. I'm quite optimistic that even after the election in Germany, we will continue. I fully agree with Mr. Kiesewetter, there is a long tradition. We are a stable partner in this respect. Today, we focused on political issues, in particular of security relevance, but there's a huge field of economic, technology, and even demographic topics to be discussed too. And this is the subject, as Rabea mentioned in her introduction, for the second part of this seminar, which we continue on Wednesday. It's about sustainable economy development, recovery, and it's about resilience and transformations after COVID-19. Again, with leading experts from Japan and Germany. Let me thank you very much to all of the speakers and moderators, and particularly to the Excellencies, Ambassador Yanagi, Excellency Nakayama, and Professor Noyes. This could not have happened without the great support and efforts by the Japanese Embassy in Berlin, by our office in Tokyo, and the department here in Berlin. It's a fantastic job you, Barbara, Rabea, and others did. And I hope that we have a lot of afterthoughts after the seminar and in the not too distant future, real encounters. We, at least from our side, promise that when the stage is possible to be set, we will be back in Germany, in Japan, and in the wider region. Let me therefore wish you all a pleasant evening and day, and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. Also from our side, Barbara and my side, I like to thank you with a whole heart for all of your contributions, food for thought, food for further debates. We will send out surveys in a little while to all of you to hear what you have been missing and what you have liked. But I'd like to take that opportunity to especially and sincerely thank all our speakers. The time is, as always, too short. And as always, we have had too many subjects, but that also means that we have to do it again, that we have to stay in touch. And I especially like the twist of having our partners from the US and from Australia with us. And this is a format we will certainly repeat. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Barbara, for co-hosting this with us. Thanks to all our technicians out there in my next room, in Barbara's next room. This is not happening without the tech wizards. So have a good day and have a good night, Ken. I hope you can go back to sleep. And thank you very much again for tuning in.
May we have a photograph with Mr. Kiesewetter? I'm afraid he was not there. So.
That is true. That is true. We lost him. And as I can see, he unfortunately has not made it back. But I like to say goodbye to our audience now and to wish everyone.
I'm in. Sorry, I'm in.
Good.
Good
to have
I'm
you.
in. Thank you for the invitation.
If Mr. Miyoshi, this is a very brief question, Mr. Kiesewetter. If Mr. Miyoshi is still in, is the Shanghai port confirmed? Yes or no? Do you have just 1 second?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, good. So Miyoshi-san, I know you're still listening. This is the answer to your question before everybody takes off. So thank you for Mr. Kiesewetter for confirming the frigate. That's sad news, but that certainly will not harm our relationship and partnerships. Thank you very much, everyone, and stay healthy and safe these days. So we will go off now. Thank you.